This program is rated PG and may contain mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
For millennia, the place we now call Italy has been a crucible of innovation. The most famous boot on the map has left an enormous imprint.
Italy is the birthplace of amazing innovators, artists, and thinkers.
They changed everything, right up through the modern era. Everything from aqueducts to the atomic age we owe to Italy.
You think style, you think art, you think finer things in life. Great engineering, fast cars, great food.
It's about reaching for the stars.
I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago.
It's about the genius of individuals. I can do this. I can break the boundaries of the possible.
The effect of Italy on the world is almost a definition of Western culture.
To celebrate Italy's contributions to the world, we're going to conduct a thought experiment. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to look at the impact of Italy on the modern world by erasing key Italian contributions to economics, science, and engineering. We'll imagine the world without some of its game-changing innovations.
Our cuisine would be unrecognizable. Our culture would be unrecognizable. Our government institutions would be unrecognizable.
A world without Italy would be a world without modern cities.
You would not recognize what the world would look like.
This is History Erased, the world without Italy. Once an empire that encompassed the Mediterranean, to city-states that became a hotbed for culture and bold ideas, to the vibrant peninsula we now know, Italy has had an incredible influence on the world stage, an impact we're about to explore. Over the next hour, we'll highlight key Italian contributions in finance, science, and communications. During our thought experiment, we'll remove them one by one. We'll see how erasing these innovations will impact lives around the world, including a young family going about their day at home, banking executives at the office, and a couple out exploring the wilderness. Of the countless ways Italy has influenced the modern world, one of Italy's most enduring innovations took shape at the end of the Middle Ages, when they revolutionized how we manage our money. Thanks to lively trade in the Mediterranean, the city-states of the Italian peninsula were incredibly wealthy.
Venice at the time was the meeting point, the door between East and West. So everyone was coming to Italy to make money.
And this money needed to be managed.
If you were going to move outside of a barter economy, you had to have a place to keep your money.
What was needed was some central institution.
Italian merchants established a place where currencies could be exchanged, loans negotiated, and people could store their money. They created the modern bank.
And in fact, the word bank just comes from the word banca, which is the Italian word for bench, where someone would sit with boxes of money and collect and exchange.
At the same time, Italians helped establish our system of accounting and stock exchanges. The economy worldwide transformed.
By the middle of the 15th century, almost all of the essential elements of banking were in place. If you were talking about banking, you're essentially talking about Italians.
Loans, interest rates, all of those things were invented in Italy and made possible the worldwide financial system that we rely on every single day.
It would be impossible to have long-distance trade without a recognized medium of exchange. Without the accumulation of capital, how are you going to build anything? Who has enough money to actually build a skyscraper? You need to borrow money.
And our whole world these days is based on this notion of credit.
going to the grocery store and paying for your groceries. How would you do that if you didn't have a banking system to facilitate those payments?
The Italian banking system revolutionized the world. And at the start of the revolution was one family, the Medicis.
The Medici family was a banking family who ended up becoming the rulers of the city of Florence.
Starting in trade, moving into banking, they become an extraordinarily wealthy family. They then start to politically dominate the landscape.
As their political power grew, several Medicis became popes. They even became royalty when Catherine de' Medici married Henry II and became Queen of France. To show off their wealth and maintain their position in Florence, the Medicis became patrons of the arts.
The Medici use art and architecture to make Florence the most important intellectual and cultural city in Italy.
It was a perfect place where art and wealth could grow.
The Medicis not only commissioned great works of art and architecture, they cultivated young artists. Donatello, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Botticelli, to name a few. Newfound wealth and ideas changed everything. It created history's greatest explosion of thought, the Renaissance.
I always think about the Renaissance as another one of those moments in our grand human story when humanity got an adrenaline shot in the arm and just took a quantum leap forward.
It was a period when people realized that they weren't held to the path of their ancestors.
The idea that we can turn ourselves into whatever we choose to be is one of the essential perspectives of the Italian Renaissance. You didn't necessarily inherit this position. You've made yourself.
This new mentality revolutionized not only business, but art. Michelangelo's sculpting of David from 1501 to 1504 is one stunning example.
Every David that had been done beforehand was normally when David was already victorious. But Michelangelo decided to offer us a picture of David in the moment before the battle, in the moment when victory wasn't assured.
It's not anymore David against Goliath, the giant. The giant now is David.
When you look at the David, you are seeing the deep concentration and thought that he's pouring into what he's about to achieve. You're seeing, I think, a much more realistic picture of what makes us human.
David, the ultimate underdog, became a symbol of a new kind of man and a new way of seeing. Can you imagine the world without Italy's incredible contributions to art and everything it inspired? But the Renaissance wasn't just about what you see. It was also about other senses, what you feel and what you hear. Italians produced the first piano, the first violin, and the first opera. Italy had a massive influence on the taste buds, too.
But I think that the pasta and the spaghetti or the pizza and the wine.
So when you taste, prosciutto di Parma, or you taste mozzarella di bufala, you're tasting history, geography, you're tasting the land. The centuries of craft that went into perfecting it.
While the ingredients have been crafted for millennia, the pizza we know today was developed in Naples in 1889.
Pizza is the perfect food. It's cheap, it's portable, it's flavorful.
Pizza Margherita is thought to have been created for the Queen as a sign of nationalism.
The basil, the cheese, and the pomodoro, the tomato, red, white, and green, the colors of the Italian flag.
Since then, pizza has spread to nearly every corner of the planet. 40% of Americans eat pizza once a week. That's 350 slices per second. That's 100 acres of pizza a day. Italians value food so much, they even have a bank for one of their favorite cheeses, Parmigiano.
A number of banks in Emilia-Romagna will actually take wheels of cheese to serve as collateral for a small loan.
Each wheel is valued up to 2,600 euros.
I think if you go into any other bank in the world and say, listen, I need to borrow some money and here's a big wheel of cheese as collateral, they would probably laugh you out of the bank.
Italy's advances in banking, in art, and culture have had an incredible influence on our lives. To begin our thought experiment, we're going to freeze these Italian assets,
6211.
which will affect everyone in the world.
It's saying it's declined.
Doesn't make any sense.
Without banking, everyday transactions become impossible. People around the world can't buy the basics, let alone receive a paycheck or pay bills.
What happened if governments couldn't make payrolls? What would happen if you couldn't pay the workers? It would be almost impossible to allow a modern economy to operate.
Like the economic crash of 2008, the impact will be felt immediately on the markets.
All of the markets around the world have crashed.
People are forced to carry cash all the time or find other means of getting by.
People will start looting stores, they'll start stealing from their neighbors.
Hey!
But as we continue to imagine life without Italy, our cities will begin to collapse. We've only begun to look at the impact of the world without Italy.
Funds are not available. Everything has crashed.
The absence of modern banking has frozen accounts and forced businesses to close. Bills and necessities can only be paid for in cash, or not at all. And people around the world rapidly try to adapt, including the family and bankers in our thought experiment. As we continue to examine Italy's impact on the modern world, the very foundations of our cities will crumble. Roman engineering and ingenuity underpin the architecture that surrounds us.
Ancient Rome was awesome in terms of civil engineering, unparalleled.
They were phenomenal engineers, phenomenal construction workers, and they essentially set the stage for modern architecture.
Marcus Vitruvius, architect to Emperor Caesar Augustus, published the world's oldest surviving book on architecture in 30 BCE. It inspired a millennia of engineers, including greats of the Renaissance. It also contained the recipe for a building material that revolutionized the world: concrete.
Almost by chance, by luck, the Romans realized that they were sitting on a really, really special material. And that's called, well, in Italian it's known as pozzolana.
Pozzolana was the secret to Roman cement, a volcanic material that made their concrete lightweight but incredibly strong.
Its magic quality is that when you add it to the mixture of cement, every time it comes into contact with water, it gets harder and stronger. So Roman cement was not only waterproof, but actually when it's lashed by the rain or any other kind of weather, it actually gets stronger as a result. It meant that they could then build buildings that stretched the possibilities of architecture at the time. Think of the Pantheon in Rome.
The Pantheon's 142-foot concrete dome is entirely freestanding.
The fact that these structures remain, despite the number of earthquakes that Rome suffered, is truly astounding.
This one Italian dome has inspired centuries of architects around the world, from Constantinople to Washington, D.C.
Concrete allows us to build buildings, to have bridges, and to have infrastructure in place that facilitates growth.
Nearly 70% of the world's population lives in a building containing concrete. Concrete wasn't Rome's only feat in shaping cities. They engineered a stronger arch.
What the Romans realized is that if you start creating sort of wedge-shaped stones and put them side by side, and then in the middle you have a keystone. It puts the pressure on those other stones going outwards. You could actually build arches of much, much wider span.
With the true arch, the Romans learned they could build anything, and they did. The Colosseum had 240 arches to support its exterior walls.
As this enormous, the largest building the Romans ever built. It was a place that was so brilliantly organized that if you had 50,000 people sitting in it, it could be completely evacuated in 15 minutes.
The Colosseum was an entertainment venue where citizens could see everything, from gladiator fights to mock naval battles.
The Romans realized that people needed a space to gather together, to let off steam, to see themselves as one group, one community.
Stadiums are still intimately tied to the cultural fabric of society. Can you imagine a world where we can't gather to witness, celebrate, or experience history in the making? Beyond great buildings, the arch revolutionized infrastructure and allowed Rome to grow. At the heart of it all were the aqueducts.
The Romans developed the aqueduct, a channel for moving water from a distant location to where you wanted to have the water.
Aqueducts were the pinnacle of water engineering.
They don't have pumps. The only way you can create pressure in a water system in ancient Rome is through gravity.
The gradients had to be incredibly precise so they could be maintained for hundreds of kilometers, from the source to the city.
And remember, they did it in Roman numerals, which is something that I can't quite imagine. More fresh water came into Rome than at any other place on Earth until the second half of the 19th century in London.
The absolute immediate need for water is human thirst. Following that, the need for water is food, it's agriculture. Without a clean, reliable source of fresh water, you cannot have any kind of human settlement. We think of New York City as a modern place, but it uses an aqueduct system that's based on the ancient Roman aqueduct system.
Our modern cities have come to rely on another of ancient Rome's game-changing materials: glass.
In the 1st century AD, there is an absolute breakthrough moment in glass-making technology. Glass blowing.
Blowing air into molten glass creates a bubble of uniform thickness, which can then be cut and manipulated into different shapes and sizes.
People would blow large glass cylinders and then flatten them to create what we would consider to be window glass.
Romans made the first glass window. 1,000 years later, on the Venetian island of Murano, glassmakers discovered a way to clarify the glass, making it crystal clear. The glass window revolutionized human habitation. It let the light in and kept the cold out.
The possibility of having windows from which the light could go in changed completely the way of building. The house became more connected to the nature and the light.
It was the seed of huge, massive shift in the way in which we live.
We might be able to technically build a skyscraper, but nobody would want to be in them if it weren't for glass.
But in a world where Italy's civil engineering innovations stop working, global construction grinds to a halt, and the freshwater lifelines to our farms and cities shut down.
You need to be able to bring in fresh water if you're going to have plants and you're going to have people. Without that, everything would die.
As taps run dry, people around the world, including our bankers, look for water.
You would have people getting sick en masse. You would have mass starvation.
Life becomes difficult without the benefit of Italian innovations. But the day only gets worse without Italian exploration. To celebrate Italian achievements, we're conducting a thought experiment where we've stripped away game-changing contributions to banking and civil engineering. Financial transactions have halted, leaving many without the ability to pay bills or buy the essentials. Without water pipelines, food and fresh water have become valuable commodities. But Italy's contributions don't end there. Italian explorers have transformed our understanding of the world around us. Medieval Italy was alive with trade, but some Italian merchants ventured beyond the Mediterranean.
Marco Polo is famous for making a journey east, all the way through to China.
In 1271, he traveled merchant trading routes to the east and stayed.
He became an official of the court of the Great Khan, and there he saw the wonders of the East.
When Polo returned to Italy after over 20 years abroad, he was captured during a naval battle and thrown in a Genovese prison.
He had to share a cell with a popular storyteller named Rustichello da Pisa.
So he started telling his stories and dictating to his cellmates. Amazingly, those stories then got published in book form.
The Milione, Travels of Marco Polo, became a bestseller instantly.
Polo's work contained fantastical stories of Eastern cultures and innovations, like paper money and the burning of coal.
It speaks to a moment when people were realizing that it was a big, big world that they lived in. What we're on the edge of with Marco Polo is an era of the great adventure.
Polo's voyage was a catalyst for the age of exploration.
Everybody in Italy knew that if you went east, you would get to what was called the Orient. If you went west, who knew? You weren't even 100% sure that the world was round at that point.
Some of the best-known explorers were Italian.
Christopher Columbus or Giovanni Gabotto or Amerigo Vespucci, who were all pushing outwards, trying to find that elusive sea route to the east.
En route to India, Columbus ended up landing in the Americas.
There is still a legacy that we still struggle with. To what extent does exploration become oppression? To what extent does knowledge become then colonization? And Italians, I'm afraid, for good and for bad, they were at the forefront of that.
While explorers traversed the globe, they kept records of the lands they saw and heard about. And these maps became prized possessions.
Maps were like weapons. Knowledge of new places was power. Having a very detailed map could change history.
Venetian monk Fra Mauro created a map, drawing on his own travels and others' accounts.
One of my ancestors was friend with Fra Mauro. Fra Mauro was one of the most important cartographers of the 15th century.
Fra Mauro's map is famed for its incredible accuracy. Maps to this day are essential navigational tools when exploring your own backyard, the open ocean, or hiking through the backcountry. Exploration at the end of the Middle Ages didn't just expand our concept of the world.
It was the exploring Earth, but was exploring even the stars. It was a moment of understanding new things.
One Italian scientist completely transformed how we understand our place in the universe and the world around us.
Without Galileo, modern science wouldn't have been possible.
One of his most famous experiments tested and proved his theories of gravity and acceleration.
I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields.
Galileo said, why don't we test what we think we know?
Well, in my left hand I have a feather. In my right hand a hammer. Hopefully they'll hit the ground at the same time. How about that?
And that was the invention of experimentation.
Galileo went on to invent a telescope to explore the heavens and began to chart the night sky. This led him to his most famous and controversial theory. The Earth revolves around the sun.
And he said, I can tell you this, Venus is closer to the sun than we are. Mars is farther from the sun than we are. The idea that the Earth is the center of the universe doesn't pass the test. You got to discard it.
Galileo presented this as a theory backed up by scientific observation.
We're no longer the center of the universe. We are just one of the planets.
Now that sounds something pretty obvious for us today, but at the time it was an absolute revolution in thinking.
Galileo's claim rocked the Western world and scandalized the Catholic Church. But to this day, the idea of experimentation is fundamental to all science.
The scientific method has taught us how to distinguish facts from opinion, and I think it's an incredible gift.
Even before Galileo's exploration of the universe, Italian minds were at the forefront of exploring the inner workings of the body. Until the 1300s, Western medical knowledge was limited and based on the work of ancient civilizations. There was no detailed map of the human body. That all changed when Italian scientists started doing dissections. One of the most famous, Leonardo da Vinci.
Leonardo da Vinci got permission to dissect cadavers, and his drawings from these dissections are so perfect that he really provides an element of understanding of how the human body works.
He's the first one to say, this is worth studying.
Every medical procedure done today relies on understanding how the body works. Incredibly, Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just an anatomist.
Everything was connected, from cutting corpse to making engineering or making a marvelous painting.
He is that quintessential polymath.
In the realm of exploration, Italian women were also pushing the frontiers of knowledge. Since its founding in 1088, Bologna University allowed women to study, earn degrees, and teach. It's the world's oldest university still operating. In 1678, Elena Piscopia at the University of Padua was the first woman ever to earn a PhD, trailblazing a path for all women. From mapmaking to experimentation to education, the world today is entirely different because of Italian exploration. But now, as we strip away the knowledge gained by exploration and scientific discovery, the medical field is hit hard. We rely on experimentation and knowledge of the human body to discover new techniques and treatments.
Our entire pharmaceutical industry is based essentially on experimentation. Without that, we literally would have no pharmaceuticals.
And without Italian explorers, we lose accurate maps that are essential lifelines, especially in times of emergency. As the world suffers without Italian innovations to count on for help, things will only get worse. Now that some of Italy's key breakthroughs have been erased, people around the world, like our family and our hikers, are looking for help, as access to fresh water, funds, and medical treatments has broken down. With the loss of more great Italian innovations, the world will be left struggling to communicate. Before the 1900s, most mass communication was sent via telegraph wires or printed in a newspaper. That changed instantly with a groundbreaking Italian technology, radio. Guglielmo Marconi began his experiments with radio waves in the late 1800s.
He realized that there should be a way through the air to send signals from point A to point B.
His first tests proved it could work over a distance of 11 miles. His next goal, 2,000. On December 12, 1901, he transmitted a Morse code S across the Atlantic.
Because of him, not only did we discover that radio works, but we discovered that radio can work beyond the curve of the horizon.
In 1909, Marconi won a Nobel Prize in Physics for his groundbreaking work. 3 years later, his radios were used to send and receive a distress signal off the east coast of Canada.
Titanic was able to send a distress signal, and some of the passengers were saved. It set such an example that it became maritime regulation that all boats and ships have radio aboard.
Marconi himself turned down an offer to sail on the doomed luxury liner just days before. To this day, radios are used to transmit information in times of emergency.
This is an emergency broadcast.
Before television came about, radio was the way in which people got a hold of the larger world.
Marconi allowed the world to communicate, to exchange ideas.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Radio also brought music and entertainment to the masses.
Wi-Fi is a kind of radio. Your cell phone is a radiophonic device.
Beyond the radio, Italy has been shaping global communication for thousands of years. The book, developed in ancient Rome, transformed the globe.
Before the book was invented, the format was the scroll.
There's a term we use called codex, which refers to basically the form of the modern book, individual leaves of paper or parchment that are bound against one edge. You could store an enormous amount of information, way more pages in a book than you could possibly do tractably in a continuous scroll. I don't think anybody can point to books and say, well, you know what's bad about books is nothing. Everything is good about them. They made the world a better place.
Think about the impact on literacy and knowledge if books were erased.
You get rid of the sharing of knowledge.
Without what we learned, our civilization will be lost.
As books spread through the Roman Empire, so too did the language, Latin, which became the foundation of many modern languages. But books aren't the only form of mass communication from ancient Italy.
Pompeii is a city that was a living, breathing place when it was completely covered by the eruption of Vesuvius, and as a result preserved.
Freezed in a moment.
When Pompeii was uncovered, some of the world's oldest graffiti was found on the walls of the ruined city.
Here's a culture that, just like us today, was graffitiing the walls with, it might be political slogans, insults, desires. What we see in the graffiti of Pompeii, I think, is a cross-section of real life. Much more gritty, real textured, real life that shows that we as human beings, in our needs, wants, desires and thoughts, haven't changed that much over 2,000 years.
Graffiti today is global, but the messages have stayed the same, whether they're painted on bricks or typed on virtual walls. Italy's contributions to the way we communicate have revolutionized the world, from seeing the vast potential of radio waves to the written word. But what would happen in a world where these communications were silenced?
If it weren't for the ability to send distress calls, almost any accident would be a fatal accident. Nobody could come for help because nobody would know you needed help.
Hello? It's not working. It's not working.
As we plunge deeper into our thought experiment of removing Italian innovations, the impact on families, friends off the beaten path, and around the globe is increasingly devastating. To explore the impact of Italy on the world, we've slowly stripped away key innovations like banking, freshwater pipelines, scientific experimentation, and radio. Many, including our family, have sought refuge. Away from the city, our hikers are on their own. The world has begun to panic. Without Italy and its electrical innovations, the day will only get worse.
Are you kidding me?
Almost everything that we rely on these days in terms of our technology is portable. Batteries are what make portable technology possible.
Italian scientist Alessandro Volta developed the first battery in 1800, called the voltaic pile. He placed alternating discs of zinc and copper, with brine-soaked cardboard in between them.
The ability to actually store chemicals that when they react will give off an electric current was a wonderful breakthrough.
We live on batteries. Everything we do, we have to charge.
The battery is so important to our world because it's a storage of power that we can use on a mobile basis.
They're in your automobiles, modern hearing aids and modern pacemakers, portable lights, flashlights. We rely completely on batteries.
And now our world is all in that direction for the future, for a clean future.
Volta's inspiration for the battery came from a colleague of his, Luigi Galvani.
Galvani was an Italian scientist and anatomist who had been exploring what happens when you put electricity into animal flesh.
In the 1780s, while dissecting a frog, Galvani discovered that an electrical charge made its legs jump. These experiments laid the groundwork for understanding how our nervous and muscle systems work.
All of it came from Galvani and his discovery that we actually are electrochemical entities.
Galvani's work found unexpected fame by inspiring a whole new genre of storytelling. In the late 1700s, scientists and showmen started galvanizing in the streets as a form of macabre public entertainment.
After a public hanging, people would go and prod the corpse with electric leads to watch the corpse jerk.
It's been said that English author Mary Shelley witnessed one of these spectacles.
The notion that you can make things twitch that otherwise seem to be completely devoid of life was fascinating to Mary Shelley.
Mary Shelley was completely inspired by galvanism to create her Frankenstein.
We got the literature of science fiction, the whole genre of the monster movie / mad scientist. All of it came from Galvani.
In electrifying the world, Italy made another breakthrough. Galileo Ferraris was instrumental in developing the first induction motor in 1888. It used electromagnetism, the spinning of magnets, to create mechanical power using AC current. It sparked an electrical revolution.
These things rolling together were creating energy. That was the great idea.
Ferraris created the first induction motor, but he decided not to patent it, opting to freely show it to others. Because of this, he's not well known for his innovation.
Basically, every labor-saving device that you have, every appliance that you have, depends on this Italian invention. The induction motor is what's in your refrigerator, it's what's in your air conditioner, it's what's in almost all of your household appliances.
Induction motors allow us to use the energy flowing into our homes, and in some cases, generate it.
Working on the same principle as the induction motor is the electrical generator, how we get our electricity.
But in the world without Italy's electrical innovations, batteries and induction motors lose their spark.
From the simplest things, having a flashlight, to the most complex, any computing device, technological device that you can run without it plugged into the wall, all of it would grind to a complete halt if we did not have that great Italian invention, the battery.
It was because of the induction motor that we have things like air conditioning and refrigeration, which is so critical to our lives.
Refrigeration is a basic need in most of the places on the earth. Without refrigeration, your food spoils. Without refrigeration, your medications die, destroyed, ruined.
As the world powers down without Italy's contributions to electrical engineering, tensions flare and the globe grows darker. Throughout our thought experiment, we've pulled away Italian contributions to banking,
It's declined.
That can't be right, okay.
the arts, science, engineering, and exploration.
We would be much poorer as a human society. Poorer perhaps in economic terms, but certainly in artistic terms. Poorer still in scientific terms, and most importantly in cultural terms.
In our world without Italy's innovations, the global economy and trade have ground to a halt. Fresh water has run dry. Electric motors stop running. Work stops. Food rots. Systems break down. Millions are getting thirsty and hungry and angry.
You would have lineups at gas stations and at grocery stores. People would start hoarding food and all types of goods. People don't realize what exactly they're capable of when their lives are on the line.
You need to be able to bring in fresh water if you're going to have plants and you're going to have people. Without that, everything would die.
They think it will be a big revolution and big wars everywhere. Now we are in a machine that you cannot change. It's like a big castle of cars that falls down.
We've only scratched the surface of Italy's contributions to the world, and without them, the planet is in chaos. Thankfully, that's not the world we live in. Italy did give the world game-changing innovations throughout the centuries.
All of these things have contributed really to what it is to be human. And that's, I think, Italy's greatest contribution.
And Italy continues to innovate. Each year, Venice is home to the world's oldest film festival and one of the most prestigious art and architecture exhibitions, the Biennale. People worldwide have been flocking to the city to exchange ideas, knowledge, and inspiration. Italy has continued to be a hub for the arts and kept an eye to the stars. A group of Italian scientists recently discovered a massive underground lake on Mars.
We have found liquid water in the subsurface of Mars,
proving for the first time conclusively that Mars contains water and may support life. On Italian soil, aerospace companies are working to build a plane that could launch civilians into space in the coming years. It would be the first time astronauts enter space from Europe. Italians have also kept exploring our biology and have been working on treatments and cures for a multitude of diseases and infections, like an Italian vaccine that was selected to fight recent Ebola epidemics, or the first approved stem cell therapy in the Western world.
Italy is a template, not just for the rest of the 21st century, but for all the many centuries yet to come.
Every time you go there, you find a wealth of wonders, and I would challenge anyone to be able to say, hand on heart, that they knew everything that Italy had to offer. I think it's a place that you always go and discover something new.